Om Swastiastu. My name is Ayusta Octabira Asmara. I'm from class 682 Morning Denpasar in English Language Education Department. So on this video, I would like to explain my proposal. The title is the effect of using the TED Talks Daily Podcast on Spotify on student listening comprehension for 10th grade student at SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar. The next is the reason why I chose the title, because I would like to explore how digital media, especially podcasts, can be used as an engaging and authentic tool to improve student listening comprehension. And also I choose specific channel TED Talks Daily Podcast because it's not just only accessible but also filled with a real life English used by native and global speaker, which make it highlight relevant for teaching English as a foreign language. And we have background of the proposal in here. In my background, the importance of English in this world for communications and also educations is listening. Why? Because listening is the first foundation that we have to understand, or we have to comprehend with it, because if we don't have the strong foundations, which is a listening, it also can affect our another skills like speaking, reading, and writing. And also it makes our communications in English it's not really good in it. So, and also I see the challenges that face from the student in listening comprehensions is the lack vocabulary, lack of motivations, and also the pronunciations, and also the content of the media. And in this background is the role of the digital media like Spotify and podcast is as an authentic, engaging tool for learning, especially the top podcasts that give various content and native speaker that also helps the challenging faced by the students. And also it helps the teachers have a new strategy to teaching student in listening English. And we have objective of the proposal. The objective of the proposal is this research is to find out the effect of using the TED Talks Daily Podcast on Spotify on the listening comprehensions of 10th grade student at SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar. And for the research questions is, there any significant effect of using the TED Talks Daily Podcast on Spotify on student listening comprehension for 10th grade student at SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar? And for the research gap that and the novelty that on my proposal is that I found on the previous research, they usually use a general podcast and they not specifically focus on one channel podcast that to know the effect on listening skill or listening comprehension. And also I found that previous study that have just focused on uh, students university or senior high school students. So that's why the novelty on this study is to fill the gap and choosing the specific channel podcast that want to see the effect of the listening comprehension, especially on vocational high school. And then for the theoretical and critical significance of the proposal, the first is the theoretical significance is it contributes to the theory of English language teaching by examining how authentic digital resources like podcasts can support listening comprehensions. And the second is practical significance. For the teacher, it's our new strategies for integrating podcasts into listening lessons. The second is for student, encourage independent learning with engaging materials. And the third is for future researchers, add to existing studies about specific podcast channel for EFL learning. And the next slide is scope and limitations. And for the scopes from this research, it just focuses on 10th grade student at SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar using the Chat Talks daily podcast to improving listening comprehensions. The limitations, we have only one school is studied. The second is limited to two schools or class, sorry, two limited to two classes. The third is short duration for the data collections, and the fourth is student motivation and digital literacy may affect result. So I hope the pre, the future researchers that have interest in analyzing TED Talk podcasts in EFL learning, so it may help them have the previous research, so it helps them to get more informations about that. And also because I just focus on the one school, perhaps the next researchers can study or apply the Tactical Daily Podcast on another school. And also because I have just limited durations or short duration of the data collection, perhaps the next researchers have a long durations to collect the data. And then the next slide, I have features and benefit of podcast. We have transcript. It helps students read along while listening. So on Spotify, they have features. While listening podcast, we can see the transcript. So it makes the user or the student uh, easier to understand the content of the podcast. And also we have playback speed. It allows adjusting the speed for better understanding. So on Spotify, they have features. They can slower or faster the speed of the podcast. So it also helps the student to understand the content of the podcast. And the third is authentic English. Provide exposure to real language use because this authentic English is also related with the various topics and accents, help students to practice with different style and vocabulary. So these 2 points it's related because TED Talk podcast provide a lot of various content and also various native speakers. So it can it can give a lot of perspective how to use English language in a real life situations, and also it's really related with our current society right now. For the example, the topics is talking about globalizations, science, business, education, and health, and etc. And the last is easy access, can be used on phones or computer anytime, because that's all podcasts uh, that we can find on Spotify application. So Spotify application that we can easily download or access on our mobile phones, laptop, or our tablet, and also our computer. So we can learn or we can study listening every time and anytime. For the next slide, we have the conceptual framework. The first is listening by technology, which means in listening, we're using technology, especially media audio. There is part of technology. So I choose podcast and I choose specific channel is Tata Podcast that we can find on Spotify. And it's the part of the treatment or the strategy from the teachers that can that I can use to uh, expected the student have some of the knowledge, like the conceptual framework. On the left of the box, we have that Talks Daily Podcast on Spotify. The first is vocabulary building that I expected the student listening comprehension is called vocabulary knowledgeable, and also comprehension exercises that expected is comprehension of main idea while listening the content, and grammar focus that I expected the student have grammatical knowledgeable, and we have pronunciation focus that I expected the inference and prediction skills, and also listening task is listening motivation that I hope the task can make student motivations improving. And also we have three boxes. The first is listening motivation, English proficiency, and listening audio digital is the supporting part of the to achieve the listening performance. After we give the treatment, after we uh, give them the support, and after that we have the result, the listening performance, which is the post test that I will apply to the student to see the score. Is there any significant tech talks daily podcasts on Spotify on student listening comprehension? The next is hypothesis of the proposal. The first is null hypothesis that we can call HO. There is no significant effect of using the TED Talks daily podcast on Spotify on student listening comprehension. And the second hypothesis is alternative hypothesis. It is called H1. There is a significant effect of using the TED Talks daily podcast on Spotify on student listening comprehension. And the next slide, we have research design. The design used is quasi-experimental design with a control group, pre-test, and also post-test. This design is suitable because it allows comparison between groups that use the TED podcast and another group that does not, without needing random assignments, which is difficult in real classroom setting. So quasi-experimental is the one of a method that we can use on quantitative approach on collecting the data or studies on research. So experimental, it's very suitable from it's experimental. It's very suitable the use for this research. And also we have research setting, population, and sample. The setting is at SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar, is Denpasar, Bali, Indonesia, at 10 grade at grade 10 students. So why I choose this place or this school? Because on this school the provides the sums of the supporting uh, for uh, for the learning process, like internet or Wi-Fi that can support the student access various source. And then the SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar also provide the student support the student use a mobile phone in learning process, especially in English process, to find another resource that can support the learning process. And we have the populations is all 10 grade student of SMK Negeri 5 Denpasar, and for the sample is 15 students from the two classes. The first is one control room group, sorry, and the one is experimental group. And for the sampling techniques is convenient sampling technique based on class availability, because why I choose this convenient sampling, because based on the student based on the school availability of the student, they just available just two classes that I can't study to collecting the data. And then we have data collections. Data collection, it is data collection and research instrument. The data collection, the first is pre-test given before the treatment to measure initial listening comprehension. The second is post-test given after the instrument to see any improvement. The third is a treatment, student listen to podcasts across 5 seasons. And for the research instrumental, I have multiple choice. I provide 20 questions that focus on main idea, vocabulary, inference, grammar, and specific details. And I also make the format of the pretest and also the process is different, because I want to avoid memorizations, because it's really affected the analysis the data. For the example, if the format I make it same from the pre-test until the post-test, I'm afraid if some of the students have memorized the pre-test and they answered it the post-test, the score it will be same. So it's hard to or difficult to see the significance. The is there any significance of using podcasts in listening comprehension? And for the technique data analysis, the first is descriptive statistic, is mean, standard deviations, mean and maximum scores from the student scores from the pre-test and also the post-test. And the second is normality and homogeneity test to check if data meets assumption for further testing. The third is paired sample t-test. It's to compare pre-test and post-test within the same group. And the fourth is independent sample t-test to compare experimental and control groups after treatment. So this that technique of data analysis that I use that the support I use to analyze the data is from software. It's called SPSS. So it helps the researcher or I to analysis of the data after I got the score from the student based on the test, treatment, and also the post test. Okay, so this is the last slide. I would like to thank you very much for watching this video on my explanation, based from my explanations, my proposal. So I close this video with Paramasanti. Om Santi Santi Santi. Thank you.